Good morning. So we'll just dive straight in. I'm going to talk this morning about the whales and the dolphins of the Maldives. And we're going to define what they are, the group Cetaceans to which they belong. We'll identify the 23 different whale and dolphin species that have been found here in the Maldives. We'll discuss their biology, ecology, and behavior. And we're going to focus a little bit on the spinner dolphins because I know that that's the focus of most people's dolphin cruises. And then we're going to highlight the issue of disturbance, the issue of boat disturbance, and look at some of the guidelines that ideally should be followed to make sure that we are not having an impact on the dolphins. Okay, first of all, whales and dolphins, just their quick taxonomy. So they belong to the kingdom Animalia, so they are animals. They are also chordates. They belong to the phylum Chordata, which means they have a backbone. That's very simple, they just have a backbone, same as us. And same as us, they are mammals. Exactly what we are as well. Then they belong to the order Cetacea. And this is a wholly marine mammal order. And this is all of the world's whales, dolphins, and porpoises. So, marine mammals, exactly the same as us. What does this mean? First, they are homeothermic. They are endotherms. This means they control their body temperature, and we can produce heat internally so that our core body temperature stays constant unless we are sick, and it can go up and down. So this is the same for our whales and dolphins. They also give birth to live young, a live baby, and they feed that young, that calf, milk from mammary glands. So exactly the same as we do for our children, the milk. So here we have a spinner dolphin calf suckling from its mother. She will just swim very, very slowly. The calf will approach underneath and suckle and drink as much milk as it needs for that time. They have lungs. They have a pair of lungs, the same as we do. So they have to come to the surface to breathe. They have to breathe air. They cannot breathe underwater. They must surface to breathe. And being a mammal means you are covered in hair. When they're first born, because you might be thinking there's no hair on that animal, when they are first born, the calves have whiskers, like cats and dogs. They have little whiskers. These fall out after a couple of weeks, but the fact that they are born with hair still puts them in the mammal category. Okay, just a little basic external anatomy, so when I talk about some of these terms, you know what I'm talking about. So starting at the very front, we have the rostrum or the beak. This can be quite long and elongated, or in some species they can have pretty much no beak at all. Then the next part, right on top of the head, for our toothed whales, we'll come back to that, they have a melon. That front bit is called the melon. And then on the top, they have a blowhole. And that's basically their nostrils. So what they've done to make sure that when they are feeding, they're not taking in water down to their lungs, they've separated their mouth and their nose. So for us, we can breathe both through our nose and through our mouth. They can only breathe through their nose, their nostril, which is their blowhole, and they only feed through their mouth. Then we have our dorsal fin. For our dolphin species, this is about halfway down the body. For whales, it's much further back. It can be up to 2/3 of the way down the back of the body. And we have our tail fluke, the tail or the fluke, and out the sides we have pectoral fins or flippers. In our cetaceans, we have two suborders, the Mysticeti and the Odontoceti. The Mysticetes are our baleen whales, and our Odontocets are our toothed whales. And worldwide, we have about 85 species of whales and dolphins and porpoises, split between 14 Mysticetes and 71 Odontocets. So first of all, the Mysticetes, the Mysticeti. These are our big baleen whales. These are the ones that possess these baleen plates. This baleen is made of keratin. This is the same material as your fingernails and your hair, keratin. but it's very, very coarse. And they are filter feeders. So what they do, they swim along with their mouth wide open, and they just gulp in all of their food, mouth wide open. But then they have a problem. They've got seawater in their mouth along with all the food, and they don't want the seawater, so they need to get rid of it. And what they do, they close their mouth, and then they use their tongue to push all of the water out, forcing it through these big baleen plates which hang like curtains. And you can think of them as big filters. They basically catch all the food, the water passes out, but it catches all the food. Once the water is gone, they then swallow their food whole. With our rorqual species, which are the three species that we actually have here in the Maldives, they're three examples of the rorquals, they have these ventral pleats on the underside of their mouth. When they're resting, these are folded up. But when they're feeding, when they are trying to engulf all of their prey, these extend. So it increases the size of their mouth. And then together with the tongue and these pleats, they pull them in to push all the water out. So this is how they feed. They are filter feeders. Our baleen whales have two nostrils, two blowholes on the top of their head. And these are pretty much all the big guys. So the first of our baleen whales here in the Maldives is the blue whale. This is the largest animal to have ever lived on the planet. The record is 33 meters, and you're weighing somewhere around 120,000 kilograms. That's the same as 40 elephants or 30 Tyrannosaurus rex. So this guy is larger than any dinosaur that ever existed. This is the largest animal on the planet, and it swims around in the Maldives. They have these huge, broad, U-shaped heads, and you're going to recognize them basically from their size. There is nothing out there that compares to them in size. The other feature, if it's a nice calm day, their blow, when they breathe out, the spray can hit 10 meters in height. Yeah, that's high. But for the biggest animal on the planet, they're eating some of the smallest. They particularly like their shrimp, krill, tiny little animals. And this is how they can be so big. These little shrimp-like krill, these zooplankton, are right at the very bottom of the food chain. They're just eating what you'd consider the plant plankton, the phytoplankton. This means that they're getting a lot of energy. So the phytoplankton get all of their energy from the sun. The plankton eat them, very little is lost. And then if you eat that zooplankton, it's still full of lots of energy and nutrients. Whereas the higher you go up the food chain, the less of this sun's energy there is. So it's always healthiest to eat things at the bottom of the food chain. Here we have our Bryde's whale. Bryde's whale. So smaller, maximum 17 meters. And the distinctive feature about this, it has 3 ridges on the top of its head. This whale is very permanently in tropical waters, lives permanently in tropical and subtropical waters, doesn't migrate very far. And compared to the blue whale, it's a bit more livelier in its feeding, so it will lunge through those clouds of plankton and food. And then our third and final baleen whale that we have here in the Maldives is the humpback whale. One of my favorites, very energetic. Also about 17 meters. Right before its dorsal fin, it has a hump on its back. So the humpback whale. And he also has lumps on his head, tubercles. And he can sometimes also be covered in barnacles. And he will regularly just leap and lunge his way through clouds of food, or he'll just leap and splash out of communication. Very, very energetic. These humpback whales, when they're feeding, they sometimes use their white pectorals to sort of flash the fish, to startle the fish. And you'll get a group of them together. They'll surround their prey, Some will be flashing their fins to try and startle them, to get them to bunch together. You might have one or two underneath them creating sound and creating a bubble curtain. So they'll let some air out of their blowhole. It creates a curtain. The fish won't swim through those bubbles. And this compacts all the fish together, and they force them very close to the surface. Once they are nice and compact near the surface, they will lunge through the middle of all that food, mouths wide open. And humpback whales sing. Predominantly the males sing. It's part of the sexual selection process. They sing to the females. So, so those are our Mysticeti.